Good afternoon, guys. Sorry that I didn't have this video posted before, but I couldn't get Screencastify to work at school, so having to do this from home. So basically, we started class by just reviewing a little bit of information today on 9/11. I posted a link to some frequently asked questions from the National Memorial for 9/11 in New York City and wanted you to go onto the Padlet and answer the first question there before you look at the speech by George W. Bush on 9/11. So the question asks you to think about what would a president's purpose be in giving a speech after an event like 9/11? What would his goal be? What would he be trying to achieve? I think it's really important to do that sort of pre thinking, especially about purpose, because remember, purpose is the point. The point of reading these passages is not so that we can understand that there are 10 different rhetorical devices in them, but so that we can understand what the purpose is and then be thinking about how does this writer actually achieve that purpose. And I think if you go into it thinking about that, thinking about what the purpose is, a lot of times with the prompts that you're given, they give you enough information in the prompt to do a little bit of prediction. And maybe you're not going to always be right about what you predict, but I think a lot of times you'll be pretty close and you might be able to get a little bit more specific once you actually look at the prompt. But I think overall, you can do a good job usually doing those predictions, and it kind of gets your mind into the right frame for reading and to be thinking about that. So after you answer that first question, I'd like for you to go to the George W. Bush speech. It's linked here as a video on the unit PowerPoint. You can watch it. It's only about 5 minutes. You also have in today's materials a transcript of the speech, and so it's about a page and a half. So there are additional questions on the Padlet asking you to think about things like how is he considering his audience? How is he making choices for his audience? Who is that audience? What kind of methods of persuasion is he using? I would say that a lot of people would say that he's using a lot of pathos, but also think about something like ethos. How is President Bush demonstrating himself to be a person of good sense, goodwill, and good character, right? A person that the American people can feel reassured by and calmed by in this difficult moment. So answer at least one or two of those other questions and be thinking about and looking at some of the responses that other students gave and thinking about some of the techniques that he's using. What choices is he making to achieve purpose? So what he's trying to do, and then how is he trying to achieve it? And then the next speech that I would like for you to look at is this speech by Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart used to be the host of The Daily Show. That's now Trevor Noah. And this is a speech that he gave to Congress in 2019 to advocate for a group of advocate for the first responders in New York City after 9/11. And so he's asking for indefinite funding for the basically the 9/11 fund, or I think they call it the Never Forget the Heroes Act, something like that. And he is advocating for that funding. And so in the speech, he's surrounded by people who are first responders on 9/11, and he is speaking in a really kind of impassioned way to Congress. So I want you to think about especially what a speaker brings to the table, as far as like what people are expecting of them. So you think about George Bush was the president, right? And so we expect certain things from the president. We expect a certain gravitas of the president. But then you have somebody like Jon Stewart, who is an entertainer, right? And so can he speak differently? Is it because of who he is, or is it just because of what he's talking about or what his purpose is? So, think about that as you're watching it. And then after you've watched, and you can also be reading it because you have a copy of it as well, I'm going to ask that you do this Kami assignment. So I'm going to go to that. So basically, this is just a copy of the speech with some questions included. So you should be able to open the assignment and to open it with Kami. And once you do that, you should have access to the text boxes that I've already created. So you should just be able to click into those boxes and answer the questions. The first one is about tone. I think that's an interesting question, thinking about how his tone is different from George Bush's tone. Why is that? What's an example that you could give to be really specific there? Question 2, what is the exigence for this speech. Exigence is not really a word that we talked about much. I think I mentioned it maybe on the first day of class, but exigence is it's an important vocabulary term for us because they'll probably put it on the multiple choice questions for the AP exam. And basically it just means what prompted or inspired the writer or speaker to speak or write. So I've had a professor before who would say, what was sticking in the person's craw, like what was bothering them. Sometimes I'll say, what was the precipitating event, like what came before this, like what inspired this person. So in the case of the George W. Bush speech, obviously this horrible, tragic event has happened, and he's speaking because of that, right? Because the nation needs to hear from the president. So think about what provoked Jon Stewart to speak here. And then question 3, what perspectives on the subject might the audience have due to their shared and or individual beliefs, values, needs, and backgrounds? So think both about Congress, but also about the greater American public who would have maybe seen this on TV. It was fairly widely televised. And so thinking about, how they might have felt and what their values are, and how is he calling upon those kind of shared values of the American people. Thinking about George W. Bush and his speech, he's really calling on this sense of national pride, right? We're Americans. We're this shining light of hope. We're, this great example of freedom that other people are trying to take down or to destroy. Then the next question asks you, how does Jon Stewart seek to persuade or motivate through appeals? There, I want you to be really specific. So I don't want you just to say he's using logos. I want you to explain how he is appealing to reason and give an example, or how he's appealing to pathos, et cetera. And then the last question just asks you, how does the writer's choice of evidence reflect the rhetorical situation and advance his purpose? So think about, why for this occasion, why for this purpose, why for this audience is he doing some of the things that he's doing? And then when you finish those questions, you should have up next to the save button up at the top right, you should have something that says turn in. So you'll just turn it in there and the assignment will be turned in. So that's all we're doing for this lesson 8. So thank you for your attention. I hope you have a good weekend.